Hi there. We need to go into the next paragraph, which is paragraph 484. And as I explained in the previous video about paragraph 483, what is at stake is this identity between subjectivity and objectivity has been explained and expressed within subjective reason or within theoretical reason. So we have the identity of subjectivity and objectivity, being and thinking, the rationality of the world, so to speak, within the subject. Theoretical reason understands its own determinations also as the determinations of the world. But that is an interior thing. That is the understanding and interpretation that theoretical reason gives of itself and the world. But that is not a complete identity of subject and object, unless it's now also expressed within the sphere of objectivity. If there is some kind of reality that the subject, that the human mind, can really understand as to be its own and yet external to it. It must be external. It must really be something else than the spirit. At the same time, it must be, again, an expression of the identity of the two. Now, according to Hegel, that is something that the free will actually does. Remember, the free will was shown to be an inner dynamic of theoretical reason. It wants to understand, it desires to understand itself and the world. The free will is the expression of this volition, this will to understand, this will to know, and this will to achieve the identity of subject and object. Paragraph 484 will help us understand in what form or what manner the free will, which is the whole of the human spirit or of spirit as such, in the shape, in the form of an intentionality, an orientation toward an external reality that it can fully comprehend as its own, because it has actually created it. So that's the element of practical reason that we are now going to pursue until we get to the more specific categories of right. Right is the name that Hegel gives to this complete self-expression of the spirit in an objective form. That is social life, that is society, that is the way human beings and the human mind and reason expresses itself in the object. Not face to face with the object like in theoretical mind, but within the object. That is the idea of practical mind, practical reason. It's about understanding within its other, that is this objective reality that is outside of it, that is exterior to it, to understand within its other what it itself is. It's with itself in its other. I look at something, I look at some kind of institution or social practice, and I recognize and affirm that as an expression of my deepest will. The will that is also connected to necessity. This is as it should be. I'm getting a fine by a police officer because I have been speeding. Well, I have to affirm that not as just a random act of violence by an unknown person, but as an expression ultimately of my will to be engaged in social practices that govern me but also protect me, that are rational, that are expressive of my own identity, and that is the reason that I should accept the fine, especially when I have indeed been speeding. This recognition of this curious external reality. Your car gets stopped, you understand the sign, so you stop your car, and you have this conversation with the police officer, and he informs you about your speed, etc. It's really a weird thing. It's quite unnatural in one sense. It's not a given reality. It's not something that came forth from my theoretical understanding of the world, even though it's presupposed. But yet it's an objective reality that I need to affirm. And, by the way, the police officer should act like one and affirm my rights as a citizen, etc. It's quite a complicated little incident, actually. And the whole of the concept of the society is involved in it. Now let's take a look at paragraph 484, where Hegel will explain this urge, this desire to objectify itself as free will. The free will wants to have an objective reality in order to express and affirm the identity of subject and object within the object and not just within the subject. So let's take a look at that. First, I'm going to take a look at the German text. So here we have the German text. I'm going to go quickly through it so that you have some preparation when we start reading the English translation. Die Zwecktätigkeit aber dieses Willens ist, seinem Begriff die Freiheit in der äußerlich objektiven Seite zu realisieren, dass sie als eine durch jenen bestimmte Welt sei, so dass in ihr bei sich selbst, mit sich selbst zusammengeschlossen, der Begriff hiermit zur Idee vollendet sei. So there's a lot to unpack here. Die Zwecktätigkeit aber dieses Willens. So he's talking about the free will that we talked about in the context of paragraph 483. So this free will has an intentionality. It's oriented towards a goal. It's goal-oriented. And that is also an activity. So it's an activity toward its goal. So what does this free will actually want to achieve? Well, seinen Begriff zu realisieren. To make its concept a reality, which actually is the ultimate category in the Encyclopedia. The idea, so-called idea, is the concept including its reality. It's a concept including its reality. So when concept and reality are totally one. That is what Hegel expresses as the idea in the Encyclopedia, and for other reasons he also calls it spirit or mind in the usual English translations. So it wants to realize, that is, to give itself an objective reality. What is this concept? It's the concept of freedom. Freedom, for Hegel, is the ultimate category in social life. That includes the abstract determinations of right. It includes the whole of social practices in civil society. It includes the idea of the state. And ultimately, it even includes world history as the history of states and their connection on the stage of world history. So it's about freedom. Now, just one note, I said this before in other videos. In English, you have this wonderful situation that you have two words. You have freedom, which actually means that my free will, that my will is not hampered by someone else or something else, that I am that I have the freedom, that is the opportunity and the power to do whatever I like. That's the word freedom. To break away from the shackles. So freedom is a negative word. So it's the negative side of the German word Freiheit. But, however, Freiheit in German also means what in English we call liberty. Liberty, that is the application of the rights that I have. So it's within society, and according to the limitations that society puts upon me, that I can exercise my freedom as liberty. both elements, liberty and freedom, are part of the concept of vrijheid. And subjectively speaking, vrijheid is freedom, but objectively, socially speaking, vrijheid is liberty. So in this case, the concept of the free will is freedom. But now, freedom has to give itself an objective expression. It has to create a world of social practices and institutions in which it can perform its freedom, execute or realize its freedom. That is called liberty. So this is the moment where freedom becomes liberty, when freedom enters into the social sphere. Now, to realize this concept, it has to give itself a reality in which it can recognize itself and affirm itself. And that means that it has to go into the äußerlich objektiven Seite, so the externally objective side of it all, dass sie als eine durch jenen bestimmte Welt sei. So that this external objective side is a concrete, a bestimmte Welt, a determined world, a specific world that is coming from the free will. There must be a world, a social world, that is determined by free will. And if it's determined, and it's, as far as it is determined by the free will, by liberty, that has this result. So dass in ihr bei sich selbst, so that in it, in this concrete world, this objective world of social practices, can be with itself.